now we'd like to welcome our guests, Amber Collins from Jackson College and Katie Berkey from Michigan Works Southeast. Thank you for joining us on our first episode of Manufacturing Matters Jackson. We'd like to start with you guys telling us a little bit about yourself. Amber, would you like to start?
Great. Thank you, Olivia, for having me here today. It's very exciting to be on your first podcast, so I'm loving that. My name's Amber Collins, like you said, with Jackson College. I'm the Director of Workforce Training, and I've been with Jackson College. It'll be 2 years this month, so it's kind of a cool anniversary for me.
That's great.
And basically, we work with individuals and students and companies to help grow their workforce, get people through education the skills they need, but to work as fast as we can with less debt.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me. My name is Katie Berkey, and I'm with Michigan Works Southeast. I am based here in Jackson. So I've been with the company about a year, and I work with our local businesses, small and large, and I'm almost like a liaison to state and federal grants. My background is human resources and staffing. I have a passion for manufacturers and tier 1 automotive suppliers, so I'm excited to be here and talk.
You know, one of the nice things about this is our organizations all work together very well, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we all work together to support manufacturing and all of our employers in Jackson County. And so that's really why we wanted for this first episode to tackle this idea of workforce, right? Because it's the common thing that we hear when we talk to a manufacturer, when you talk to any employer, being able to hire, being able to get the skill sets that we need and those kinds of things. And so we're super excited to have you guys for our first episode. So,
Thank you.
So maybe I'd start with Katie. Could you maybe share some examples of how your organizations collaborates with the rest of the workforce system in Jackson County?
Sure. I think one of the biggest ways that we collaborate, and I think a great example would be the Talent Coalition in Manufacturers Day, because that really brought all of our organizations together, and I think we all had an opportunity to work together and to see what each of us brings to the table, whether it was a marketing piece, whether it was flyers, whether it was security detail, whether it was getting employers, on board. All of us were able to chip in because of the great relationship that we have with our employers, and they were willing to show up for us. So they got to see how we collaborate and that we can come together and do an awesome event that brings talent and manufacturers together at the same time.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
And in addition to that, the trade show I thought was a great opportunity for us to come together, like Katie was saying, but really just also a referral process, right? So working together to make sure that we are meeting the needs of our companies, whether Jackson College has the opportunity or the answer, or if it's Jackson Area Manufacturing Association, JAMA, Enterprise Group, working with the Chamber, working with Michigan Works Southeast, just letting employers, students know all of the opportunities that are available right close here in Jackson and our surrounding areas. And so the more that we collaborate together, the more that we learn about the services each other offer, it just really creates a balloon of services and support for our employers. And I think we're doing a really great job at, even just this podcast, coming together, sitting in this room, better understanding how we can support our employers. In those types of events, working with hiring events like that, I know that we were in the Commonwealth Center building a couple years, it was probably like the first 6 months that I was working at Jackson College. Olivia and I got together. We brought in Michigan Works. We were actually at the Commonwealth Center building doing a hiring event for manufacturing. We did bring in a few other, manufacturing supporting companies as well. But I do believe we had, and correct me if I'm wrong, like over 30 employers that were there at the Commonwealth Center building. We had over 100 job seekers come through, even including East Jackson High School students. So just trying to get a K through 12, get, adult students or adult learners to come in and look for those opportunities. And together as a team, I'm excited to be in Jackson and working in that arena. Yeah.
Yes, and I think, that's one of the things that makes Jackson stand out and attractive to, businesses is that we do have a lot of different resources and we do collaborate and work together. As we move into that, Amber, how do you balance the needs of businesses but also prepare individuals for sustainable careers?
So I'd have to say, really talking, getting out there, meeting businesses, understanding what their needs are, but I have to say taking that one step further to our advisory councils. So depending on the different programs, depending on what companies need, our educators, our instructors really need to understand what it is that will make our students successful in careers, right? And so I'm continuously inviting employers to come in and talk with our instructors, talk with those advisory councils. It's usually once or twice a year. It's not a large time commitment, but it's really for us to understand that our curriculum is staying current. It's giving the skills to those students to make them more successful and more recruitable for those individual opportunities here in Jackson. So looking at our local and surrounding companies, working with our economic developers, working with our chamber to make sure that as we are growing and there's more companies coming in and there's more opportunities here, what does Jackson College need to do to stay current and up to date with those types of trainings?
Olivia, Jackson, you guys also do some similar sorts of things like that as well, right? And employer advisory councils and that kind of thing. Maybe you could expand upon that as well.
Yeah, so JAMA created the Academy for Manufacturing Careers in 2005, and so we have numerous apprenticeship occupations that we're offering training for. And the board has always been built of manufacturers, and so they're providing us with those feedback and resources on what we should and should not be doing.
So I think that's one of the things that makes this community somewhat unique. I've been blessed to have had opportunities to work in some other communities before I've come to Jackson, right? And I have saw where the workforce system works really well, and I've saw in communities where the workforce system doesn't work well. And I think we're very blessed in this community because we have a lot of organizations that are growing in that same direction, right? I mean, there are always challenges, there always is, right? Everything's always evolving, but that's one of the things where we have such an opportunity here, right? And speaking of opportunities, I think that one of the things that always comes up with workforce when we talk about this with our employers is, how do I pay for it, right? How do I would love to do workforce training, but there's a cost to it, both in time, both in having the know-how to do that kind of thing, and then also just paying for it as well. I know both of you have opportunities to help with that, so maybe start with you, Katie, and then I know, Amber, you're going to have some answers for that as well. So.
Yeah.
Sure, I'm excited to talk about the different ways that we can offset costs for employers. And that's probably the biggest sell for me when I'm talking about training and workforce development, and potentially a company being on board with that is offering the state and federal grants. So we have those grants for new hires and training. And then our biggest grant is Going Pro. We cover 5 counties with Michigan Works Southeast, which includes Jackson, and we were able to bring almost $1 million to Jackson this last cycle. So
That's amazing.
That was very exciting. So 2025 is definitely looking up, and we work very closely with our partners, our training providers, to figure out costs. And I know they're coming up with plans for our employers, and so then I'm able to help them complete the grant, submit that, put them in the best possible position for scoring, because Going Pro is competitive. So I take that very seriously in trying to get them and guide them, because I want them to be competitive. I want them to get the money, and I want to see Jackson grow.
I would say on behalf of all of Jackson County, we are thankful that you are competitive and
very
wanting
competitive.
wanting to position them best to be able to get the funding. So thank you. So,
Yes.
Amber.
That's wonderful. So I would say one of my first sentences when somebody is talking about training and how to pay for it is, have you talked with Katie at Michigan Works? Then we lead into, no, I'm kidding. So in addition to the Going Pro, we've also been successful, and I think JAMA has done this as well, but talking with employers about your incumbent worker grant.
Absolutely.
Would you want to talk about that a little bit? Because I think that's a huge benefit as well.
Yeah.
I was
think-
just texting you
Yeah.
about this
Yeah.
I'm
yesterday.
glad
I
that you
think, so.
mentioned that because we've actually completed quite a few incumbent worker grants just in the month of December. So you'd think it would be a slow month, and employers were already on it thinking about training for January. So it was very exciting to get those submitted to the board for approval. And hopefully that's almost $30,000 that I think is going to go to employers for this next potentially 6 months of the program year that's left over. So anyone who has worked for a company for a minimum of 30 or 90 days, their probationary period, once they've gotten past that, they can submit an incumbent worker grant. And that's up to $15,000 per company. So we're working very closely with our training providers, figuring out what the needs are for our employers. I'm asking them to submit wish lists or create wish lists. What is on your wish list? What would you like to see happen? And then let's figure out who then is your training provider. And then what are those training dates and what does that money look like? So that's kind of how I tackle any of those grants, but the IWT is great.
You also have some federal dollars, right?
Right.
That you can use for on-the-job training as well, correct?
Yep, so that is the OJT, the on-the-job training, and then the IWT, which is the incumbent worker training. Those are both federal grants.
Okay.
So we work with those year-round. So whenever the money is dispersed is generally when that year starts.
Awesome. Thank you.
So with those wonderful opportunities for employers for, helping to offset the cost of hiring new people, upskilling your current employees, and then the Going Pro, which kind of encompasses everything, Jackson College, in addition, and can be kind of braided into those grants, we also offer the Michigan New Jobs Training Plan Grant, which is essentially, we call it the MNJTP, rolls off your tongue a little better, right? All those acronyms.
We all love acronyms.
We love them.
Every industry has them.
Yes, but basically it's a bit less, I guess, cumbersome than some of the like Going Pro and things like that. And the reason I say that is there is still paperwork. There are still requirements that an employer would have to meet in order to be eligible for this. But honestly, Jackson College, all community colleges in the state of Michigan have the capability of dispersing up to $500,000 when they're in the queue. When I first came on about 2 years ago at Jackson College, we were in the queue probably every 6 to 8 months. This last round, we were in the queue within a 3-month time twice, right? So we do have, right now, Jackson College is in the queue, which means I have up to $500,000 to disperse to eligible companies that are looking to train either, and it has to be for new positions, net new positions to their payroll. So those positions in Jackson County have to meet a minimum wage of $20.70 per hour, and then they have to be a net new position. So we could kind of talk through those details, work through that, but if a company knows that they're looking to hire several new employees or several new positions, adding those in, chances are they could be eligible for this. The one really cool thing that I love is that there's no real time frame, right? We set up a lot of these agreements on a 3 to 5 year basis to start off, which would allow a company to kind of forecast out and hire those new potential employees. Once those employees are in those positions and they're starting to get paid, get a paycheck, then they are able to divert those Michigan state income taxes. That money grows, and then the employer can use that money to train that individual. And so the training that's eligible is, we always love to say, Jackson College, give us a chance. If we can't support those trainings, then we would definitely refer them to individuals like JAMA or other institutions, even corporate companies that come down and do their own training. Like if a company is purchasing a new machine of any sort and they want that employee to be a little bit more trained by that particular purchase agreement, sometimes they can do training that way too. And a lot of times it can be also covered by MNJTP funds. So the agreements can extend to make sure that the company has time to use the money that they're diverting, as well as divert the funds that we allocate to them. So it kind of grows with their training needs.
I love that idea that you talked about too, of how you can kind of braid that funding together with, being able to sort of stack that so that if a company has a need, that Jackson College can have a piece, that Michigan Works can probably bring something in, maybe JAMA could bring something in.
Yeah.
We could stack MEDC's credits for new jobs, some of these kinds of things to where you make it to the point where it makes it tough for a company to say no.
Sure.
And that's some of the things I
Absolutely.
appreciate, so.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
JAMA also has some grant funding available for new apprentices, so we're excited to be able to offer that opportunity. So to continue the conversation, we're all out in the community talking to different companies and organizations. So what are the common skill sets that manufacturers are telling you that they need? I know I've heard a lot about soft skills lately. Can you tell me a little bit about what you're hearing?
So I would say that we offer workshops. So we send out a calendar, and any employers that are interested in receiving that calendar. So those are some workshops that address soft skills. We're also seeing a lot of requests for leadership training. So I know, whether it's new jobs or, finding people, leadership, and we're talking about retention and we're talking about workforce development is great, but we have to keep people, right? So we can't just keep developing talent. The idea is that we grow that talent within a company. So when we're looking at that retention piece, that's a big one.
Definitely. I'd have to kind of second that as well. We actually had a speaker come into Jackson College from a conference that some of our deans went to, and she talked about soft skills now being called durable skills. And I really love that, right? Like it just seems like it's a little bit more transferable. But honestly, the need from our employers, manufacturers, when you're out there talking with them, it's still, I hear a lot about those soft or now durable skills, right? Making sure somebody can get to work on time, making sure that they have communication skills, if they need to work as a team or independently, having the ability and the individualism to be able to go out and do that kind of stuff. Just kind of those innate drives that individuals need to be successful. How do you teach that, right? And then there's still the technical skills, but a lot of times I hear from employers that they can teach those technical skills on the job, right? So really kind of working with employers and each other to make sure that we're covering what it takes to make sure that those durable soft skills are enhanced. And I think one thing that Jackson College has been doing and really taking a look at is helping to create those talent pipelines. Making sure that we're working with K through 12, working with our adult learners, but also our incumbent workers, those people that are on the job right now and just want to get skilled up, to make sure that they have those types of durable skills and allows them to be a little bit more competitive when they're looking for work. We also work really hard with our employment hub, which plays a big role in internship opportunities. So making sure that students that are in a lot of our different pathways have the opportunity to meet with employers early on before they graduate to get that on-the-job skill set that they're looking for, which kind of sometimes I see brings value to their education that they don't always get in the classroom, right? So what can they learn? Like, oh, I can't be late. I got to make sure that I have time to punch in, punch out on my time card. So I better be to work 10, 15 minutes early, right? Steel-toed shoes, I better make sure they're in the car on my feet before I get to work so that I have them when I'm at work. Just thinking through that timeline to make sure that they're prepared, that they're ready, and that they're have the skills to be on the site. And just thinking about that a little bit outside the box, right? So what can we do with K through 12 to help them so that the students are a little bit more prepared when they get to, say, the community college level and then onto the work, into the work environment. So I feel like that's a big piece. That's a really big piece in how we're working together, not only just as our workforce development, but also thinking of our K through 12 as workforce development too, and bringing in more shop classes and more equipment in the high schools to kind of bring that through.
So you guys have both kind of touched on some of your outreach. You know, you talked about like Katie, you talked about having the calendar with things you've got coming on. Maybe could you guys just both maybe touch on a little bit more, like how are you reaching out to employers? Like how are you connecting with them?
Sure. So I try to attend a lot of networking events.
Yes.
I try to attend them all.
I see you at a lot of networking
Yeah,
events. So.
and a lot of that is just because I think businesses don't realize that even if they're not wanting a grant right this second, it's a great opportunity to start building that business relationship. It's a great opportunity for us to start getting to know each other and seeing each other. And then when we start talking about what are your plans for the next 5 years and what does growth look like and how do we get to that point? And then usually that business relationship kind of goes from there. I also try to partner with these guys. They try to show up to events that they're hosting. They try to show up to my events. We support each other. And that also gets me out there in the community so I'm seeing things. I go to the resource fairs so I can meet our partners that maybe I don't know what they do. So if I run into an employer who has certain needs, then maybe I'm that connector for them to say, hey, I know somebody, or I'm needing to, check my interview process. Great, connect you with Jackson Collaborative Network. So you only know those partners by building those relationships, showing up to those events. People see you in the community, and that's really it.
Yeah, great.
Definitely, I feel like the community networking events, the NOSH networks on Friday mornings. Networking Nash, thank you. The afternoon, the after hours events that the chamber's doing, bringing in, it really checks a box for me, right?
Yes.
So like if I feel like I need to network this month or I need to network this week, you go to one of those events and you run into people that you haven't seen in a long time or new people that you are getting introduced to. And it just really, I haven't been to one event where it has not led to something else or a bigger conversation or a referral to somebody. And so I really feel like that is a great benefit to our employers, our educators, everybody, the organizations in Jackson. I also feel like we try very hard to, and I've been pulled in several times, like the MEDC. Jim Kuchu has pulled us in if they're working on a project, or the Enterprise
Absolutely.
Group has pulled us in. JAMA has brought us along to where, kind of what Katie was saying, if somebody doesn't have, or they see that a company is growing, maybe they want to buy a parking lot, or they know that they're hiring 300 people, or they know that there's going to be some training. I love how this group, how this workforce team has really came together and brought people along with them to these meetings. So I think, one, it really helps our employers where their time is valuable, right? They don't have time to sit down with me and then a week later sit down with you and a week later sit down with you, right? If we can all come as a team and talk about our services and how we can support, I see that being very beneficial, and that's one huge benefit to being a part of this team. We also at Jackson College do tours often where we invite employers in to look at our STEAM lab, look at our campus, have a space. So we do also help other organizations that need space. We can rent and look at that as well on a temporary basis for different things. We also hold different conference opportunities. So if a company is looking to do a 1-day, 2-day type conference, team building or just a learning session, we can also do that as well. So I think those are things that kind of bring us together and help us grow as a community.
Well, thank you, ladies, for joining us. I just want to kind of end our conversation, I think, with Can you give us a story about workforce development or a job seeker that was successful? Amber, we'll start with you.
All right. This is my favorite part of the job, right? Like when I talk to other people, I just think I have the best job because I get to see these success stories, right? I have to say, just recently, we worked with an employer here in Jackson County who actually worked with Michigan Works to get an incumbent worker grant that paid for 24 of their middle level managers to be upskilled in leadership. And so essentially we split it up. So we understand that it's hard to take everybody off the floor at one time, right? So we're able and flexible enough to be able to bring instructors out to their campus, out to the employer's location to provide this training. And it was essentially free to the employer, free to the student or the employee taking it. We had a great instructor, and I think it ended up being about 2 weeks, half days, and the feedback that we received was huge. They're actually going to hope to do it again next year. So heads up.
Awesome.
Heads up. And since then, there's another company here in Jackson that's jumped on board, and they went through, got an incumbent worker grant that was fully approved yesterday at the board meeting. And so they're going to be able to train another 7 of their supervisors in Leading Edge Series, which is our durable training skills for leadership. And so I really am excited. And I have to say, one thing that we did a little bit differently that we've done in the past is we really worked to say, what would remove barriers for both employees and employers? And obviously it comes down to cost, right? So we looked at the requirements for an incumbent worker grant, and we said, let's build this training to make sure that it's going to be eligible for incumbent worker grants, right? So then we can say, if you're eligible, if they do the correct paperwork and requirements, potentially an incumbent worker grant could pay for this training. So therefore we present it that way, like call Katie, figure this out with her, and then we can move forward with that. And so we've been successful now twice, hopefully 3 times moving forward, but the more the merrier. So I really feel like just looking at ways to think outside the box, remove those barriers, helps people be more successful, and we can do that more as a group, individually, and for as many employers that need it.
Are there opportunities then when a company does these kinds of trainings that you could then crosswalk that into credits that then would apply back towards an associate's degree or a bachelor's degree?
I'm so glad that you brought that up. Of course, yes. That's kind of our main goal, right? A lot of this continuing education is we're building these so that, and even working with local companies that are doing their own training or working with JAMA to look at what they're providing in that training and walk it into an articulation agreement, which ultimately ends up in JC credit. So if that student wanted to come back and enroll in a certificate program or a degreed program to go and get their associates, they're there much faster, and a lot of times didn't have to pay for those initial 2 or 3 classes because of that situation. So there's a local manufacturer that we're working with right now that has done this, and I think they've put over 40 people through an initial 8-week program that they have right on campus. It's their program. We articulated that into 10 credits at Jackson College. So those individuals that want to enroll into a certificate program, they only have to take 2 classes to get that certificate. And so things like that we're open to, we're looking at, and excited about.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So we were working with a small fabrication company here in Jackson that had maybe 20, 25 people. We were able to go through the incumbent worker grant and get them almost $15,000 to train their staff in welding. So, and partnered with JAMA on that. So that's a few different examples of ways that I've partnered with JAMA, ways that I've partnered with Jackson College, and we've provided, I would say, a huge amount of money because, like you said, it comes down to cost. So unfortunately, a lot of times I get stuck talking about the money that we're getting awarded, but that money goes to the companies, and I'm proud of that because it's hard work from our partners. It's the referrals that come in. That's the people that bring you to the table. And so those are the success stories, knowing that we're upskilling now 15 people.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, maybe one more time, just for everyone, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Jackson College, Amber Collins, CCE or Corporate Continuing Education, our website, jccmi.edu.
Katie?
All right, and so I'm Katie Berkey with Michigan Works Southeast in Jackson, and you can reach us at mwse.org. Also, my phone number is 517-314-9590. We have Going Pro informational sessions that are coming up in April and May, so we'll want to get you on the list.
That's awesome.
Yes, thank you both for joining
you.
us on
Yes.
our first episode of Manufacturing Matters Jackson.
Absolutely.
It's been great.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
for
Thank you
having
for
us.
having us.
Yeah.